I come from the Lackawanna Valley in northeast Pennsylvania. And we're made of, no, I'm serious, made of the same stuff, man. If you knew where I came from, you'd think you were home. I mean it. Look, folks, I have campaigned over the years for an awful lot of people. There's nobody that I admire more than Ted Strickland. Ted and I have gone all, no, I really mean this. We've gone up and down and across this state in 2 campaigns. I was in here last campaign, 23 days. He probably wouldn't get the hell out, Joe. But you know, it matters because the people I trust most in life and in politics are the people who the idea that they care about forms in their gut first, and then it goes to their heart, and then it's articulated, if they're as bright as this guy is, through their head. But I really mean it. They're the people I trust. The people who arrive at a conclusion based on an intellectual exercise and they've reasoned it through, they're good people. But when things get really tough, they're the people who sometimes crack a little bit. But the guys and the women who feel it in their gut, as my mother would say, can taste it, understand it, smell it, see it. They're the people that I trust. And Timmy, you're in the same category, buddy. You know, I know about Irish and Italians. I'm Irish and I'm married an Italian. Bless me, Father. God Almighty. Besides, she's Sicilian, and I don't know, man. I don't screw around. I must tell you that. I tell you, I listen to her. But all kidding aside, Tim, you're a stand-up guy. Tim touched on something that I'm going to speak to briefly about today. My biggest problem with Donald Trump, I'll tell you about it in a minute, is not his cockamamie policies, is the way he treats people. No, I mean it sincerely now. The way he talked, think about growing up in your house, at your kitchen table. If you ever talked about people like he does, I'm not joking. I really genuinely mean this. If you ever sat there and, you know, talked about how, you know, how cool it was that, you know, John down the street got fired. You're fired. A phrase he's made famous. You're fired. You ought to come from a household where some people were fired, where the plant closed down, where all of a sudden they're staring at the ceiling, wondering how in God's name am I going to make it? A guy who says, and he means it, American workers make too much money. No, really. I mean, just think about, all kidding aside, it's not, I mean, I'm being deadly earnest here. This part's not the campaign speech, man. This is about the character of the person we're talking about elected as President of the United States. You know, Doug's here, Doug Franklin, the mayor. Thank you for the passport, Mayor, to get into town. You guys get it. You guys get it. You know, I know Robert and Glenn couldn't be here, but I quite frankly like the fact that Sherry and Glenn Johnson are here. I like vice presidents better than presidents anyway. But all kidding aside, back in 2008 and 2012, I came here to ask for your vote, and I guess I was presumptuous enough to ask for your trust. I stood here and asked you, I said, I promise you, trust us. Trust us. You gave us both. You gave us your vote, but more importantly, you invested your trust in us. And I came back to say, first and foremost, thank you. I know, no, all kidding aside, I mean this sincerely, from the bottom of my heart. I know I would not be standing here today as vice president. This is not hyperbole. I would not be standing here today without you all, without the American labor movement. I would have never, ever, ever, as a 29-year-old kid, been elected in the corporate state of Delaware, were it not in September, all of a sudden, knowing that I had no chance, the UAW stood up. The single largest workforce in my state back then in '79 was the UAW. It represented 10% of the entire workforce in my state. There is no UAW left in Delaware anymore. But it represented 10%. And you stood up. You took a chance on a kid. You took a chance on somebody who said, I promise you, I get it. My grandpa used to say, Joey, you're labor from your belt buckle to your shoe sole. And for a simple reason. For a simple reason. I am a student of history. I was raised in a family that was straightforward and honest. And the fact of the matter is, American labor, not figuratively, literally, and you kids, you're not being taught this these days, literally built the middle class in America. There would be no middle class in America. That's not hyperbole. Without organized labor. And Barack and I wouldn't have been elected president and vice president without all of you. And I hope you know I've tried to repay your trust. When Barack and I were sworn in January 20th, 2009, the auto industry wasn't on its heels, it was on its back. There were literally serious discussions among serious people of letting the industry collapse. Not just right-wing guys and the Chamber of Commerce guys. But remember what they were saying about y'all? They were saying American workers were not productive, that y'all were lazy. I mean, try to remember what this really was, man. That you couldn't compete with the Japanese. You couldn't compete with the Germans. We weren't as smart. We weren't as dedicated. We'd become lazy. And it wasn't worth it. President asked, I know I get blamed, but I'm happy now I got blamed for being the SOB at the family picnic, insisting that we bail out, quote unquote, bail out the automobile industry. Because I was absolutely convinced, along with Ted and Sherrod and Tim, I was absolutely convinced because of who I knew, how I grew up. We knew the automobile industry was not just an important economic element of the American economy. It was the symbol of who we were. That's right. What are we known best for in the world? The American automobile industry. We built it for the world, not just for the United States. And we understood how central to the well-being of our economy the automobile industry was. But remember back then what our friends were saying on the other team. And I really mean it, because nothing's changed. It's the reason I'm bothered to remind you of this. It's not like, oh God, we're tired, Joe, about hearing how we bailed out the industry and it's working, okay? We know that story. But the thing I want you to remember was why I got my brains kicked in, and the president did, by the Wall Street Journal and by the Republicans and by your opponent. That's right. And by the last administration. It was about you weren't capable. You weren't capable of building the best product in the world. You weren't productive. You were overpaid. Remember that argument? How many times did we hear for 8 years about how you're overpaid? How many times did we hear last time around, well, let them go bankrupt. Let Detroit go bankrupt. Right here in Ohio, as Ted pointed out, his opponent said, this is a lousy deal for Ohio. We had gone down to selling only about 6 million vehicles a year. And remember, go back and look, as my wife is a college professor, and say, Google it. Check it out. What was the mainstream center-right press saying? We could never build more than 6 million cars in America. Mainly because you weren't competent. You had lost your desire to work hard. You'd gotten fat and happy. That was the whole story. That's still Trump's story. And guess what? Why bother to invest? But you know who invested most in the recovery of the industry? Everybody forgets this.
That's right.
The UAW.
That's right.
You all contributed the most. You gave the most at the office,
That's right.
as they say, to resurrect this industry. You took a hit to get it back on its feet when management had screwed up the whole process. You're not designing the cars. Management designed them. My dad was in the automobile industry. He said, just give me product. I can sell it if you give me product. Well, guess what, guys? The bottom line is these same guys, they haven't changed. It's not about the automobile industry. It's about the American worker still. They don't know you. They didn't know you then. They don't know you now. They didn't know where I come from. Folks, we all come from the same neighborhood, the folk in here. Whether it's Youngtown, Scranton, Toledo, Pittsburgh. And this other guy, he's not a bad guy. He don't understand this any more than you understand what it's like to live in a 30,000 square foot penthouse, 80 floors up in New York. You don't understand that. I don't. He doesn't have any idea what it's like to sit at my dad's kitchen table and hear my mom say, honey, we need new tires on the car. And they say, honey, you gotta get 10,000 more miles out. We just don't have it right now. He doesn't understand the conversation that still goes on in the valley. Honey, who's gonna tell Mary? She can't go back to college this year. I don't know how to tell her. What do we say to her? Look, folks, what you get, what we get, what the vast majority of the Americans get, is give an American just an even chance. Just give him a chance. No, my dad used to say, I don't expect the government to solve my problem. I just want them to understand my problem. Just give me a chance. Neighborhood where we came from is where your character is etched, where your values are set, where your view of the world and your place in the world is formed. Like you guys. I came from a neighborhood, most of the people, I shouldn't say, I expect like you guys. I came from a neighborhood where most people didn't go to college. Kids all aspired to go to college. All our parents aspired for us to go to college. But we learned our values by watching our mothers and fathers. I learned it by watching my grandpa, listening to the conversations at that kitchen table. My dad had to leave Scranton after World War II in the mid-50s to find work. He was a proud man. But yet he had to walk up the stairs in our house and say, honey, I'm sorry, you can't go back to St. Paul's. You're going to have to move in with Grandpa because Dad has to. We can't keep the house. I got to go find a job. But it's going to be okay. He believed it'd be okay. So I'm going down with Uncle Frank down to Wilmington. There's jobs down there. I'll be back in a year. I'll come home every weekend, but I'll be back in a year. And we'll bring everybody down. Looking back on it as a young adult, I thought that must have been hard for him to tell me and my brothers. But what must have been even harder was to walk into my grandpa's pantry and say, Ambrose, the father of 4 men, 4 boys and my mother, and swallow your pride and say, can you take care of Gene and the kids for a year? But I promise I'll pay you back. From that moment on, even though I was in 4th grade when we moved, spent a lot of time going back home to Scranton, my dad would say, and at first I didn't understand it, but he'd repeat all the time what you guys feel in your bones. Say, Joey, a job is about a lot more than a paycheck. It's about your dignity. It's about respect. It's about your place in the community. It's about who you are. My grandfather Finnegan, Joey, remember, nobody's better than you. You can do anything anyone else can do. You've heard that in our family. And our parents meant it. We learned about resilience. We learned that success is not about whether you get knocked down, it's about how quickly you get up. That's who we are. We get up. We don't break. We don't bend. We get up. That was my neighborhood. That's your neighborhood. And that's who the hell we are. And look what you did. You got back up. You're now selling 17 million cars a year. Made in America. The most ever. You're making the best damn cars in the world again. You are the most productive workers in the world. That's not Joe Biden pro-labor. That is a simple, natural fact. American workers are 3 times as productive by every study as Asian workers are. I'm so sick and tired. I know I'm not supposed to get angry, but I'm so sick and tired of hearing people like Trump in the Chamber of Commerce, the National Chamber, talking about we get paid too much, that we don't want. Give me a break. Give me a break. This is a guy born with a silver spoon in his mouth that now he's choking on because his foot's in his mouth along with the spoon. So the message to all you kids, don't make any excuse for where you're from or who you are. Don't make any excuse for our insistence that we get paid a fair wage. That's why I like this guy behind me. And by the way, you know, I know some of you are mad at Hillary. I know some of you look at her and say, let me tell you something, man. She gets it. And she never yields. She does not break. She stands up. You know what I like about them both the most? They know how to spell the word union. U-N-I-O-N. Union. They know why we're who we are. They know who built the middle class. Hillary Clinton was the co-sponsor of the card check legislation. It's not just, and by the way, this stuff about us building the middle class does not just come from Joe Biden and Hillary and Ted and Tim. It's a fact. Everybody's beginning to figure it out. All these major think tanks are now beginning to figure it out. There's an economic research institute called the Economic Policy Institute. They just put out a 57-page report that wonks like me end up reading. The headline of the report says, union decline lowers wages for non-union workers. Yes. Now remember how the Chamber of Commerce always go out to the non-union worker and say, the reason why you're not making more is because those union guys. They blame us. The only reason they had any benefits was because of unions, even though they were non-union. So this report, 57 pages, I commend it to the press. Here's the conclusion of the paper. It says, if organized labor was as strong today as it was in 1979, the whole country would be doing better. It says that non-union workers would be making on average $2,700 a year more on average if unions were as strong as they were. Ladies and gentlemen, we should be growing the labor movement. Trump and the Chamber of Commerce the last 12 years have declared war on labor's house. Ted Strickland knows it. Hillary knows it. That's why she led the card check fight. That's why Ted supported. That's why Ted has never, ever, ever turned his back. Do you think for a moment, and tell your friends out there who are angry and they say pox on both their houses, I don't want to vote for anybody, ask them a question. I mean it sincerely. Try it. No matter what their politics are. Do you think there's any possibility that Donald Trump would do anything other than continue to try to break the labor movement? All kidding aside. You know, I served with a guy, I'm so old, I served with a guy named Barry Goldwater. He made famous, he made famous a phrase. He said, in your heart, you know I'm right. Ask people in their heart, look them in the eye. Do you actually think Donald Trump cares about raising the average salary of average workers? You know, there used to be a basic bargain in America. Democrats and Republicans agreed to the bargain. And I mean this sincerely. It existed since 1934, with Republicans as well. And here's the bargain was. If you contribute to the well-being and profitability of the enterprise you work with, you get to share in the benefits. Big study done. Of the Fortune 500 companies that have been in the Fortune 500 for the last 10 years, from 2003 to 2012, they made $2.7 trillion, which is a good thing, corporations make that much money. You know what they did with the profits? They spent 54% of it buying back their stock so they can raise the value of the stock they get paid with. And two, they gave 37% to their investors, leaving 9% for every other thing, including expansion, workers' wages, benefits, new plants, equipment. You know what that generated? It generated outfits like, some of the kids will know it, the IMF, the International Monetary Fund, Standard & Poor's, no Democratic think tank, saying the greatest threat to growth in America and the world is the concentration of wealth in just a few hands. That's what this guy's all about. That, by the way, Republicans didn't used to be that way. Those of you in automobile business remember that old phrase, this ain't your father's Oldsmobile. This ain't your father's Republican Party. This is a different deal. Ted and Hillary not only intellectually get it, they understand in their gut. This guy grew up in Duck Run, man. I mean, this guy grew up and described it was, I don't mean to be degrading, but it wasn't much more than a chicken coop you lived in.
For a while.
No, I'm serious.
Yeah.
For a while. I mean, really. Talk about resilience. Well, I didn't know it was literal, but damn, I tell you what. But he gets it. But he never ever turned his back on you. Not one single solitary instant or moment. And by the way, you know, it's amazing. When you were going to the rainy day fund and we were trying to help bail you out with the Recovery Act, which I was doing.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Well, no. Here's the deal. You know the budget that caused this all to happen? He's not a bad guy, but Portman wrote the budget. Portman headed up their office, the budget man. He was the guy that wrote the budget. Not a joke. He's not a bad guy, but he wrote the budget. He was in charge of the Bush budget. And as congressman, he voted for the Ryan budget. The Ryan budget makes sure that you privatize. This is what it hadn't passed the whole Congress, thank God. But it's you privatize Social Security. You give a voucher for Medicare, meaning an absolute amount. If you go over that, you're dead, figuratively and literally. Cuts $6 billion in education, the quality of high schools and grade schools. Cuts aid to education. No, I mean that's the budget. He voted for it. They voted for it 6 times. Again, not a bad guy, but he has no notion of what's going to benefit labor, non-labor, just the middle class in America. And unlike his opponent, Ted didn't think the auto rescue was a bad deal. You know, when I was here the first time, you were laying off 1,700 people. And remember the threat that General Motors was making? They're going to move everything to Mexico, remember? That was a deal. Today you got 4,500 folks punching a card, building one of the hottest selling cars. And most importantly, you're being able to allow your families to have a basic, decent living. But it's still a struggle. The thing that I criticize on my party, if anything, while we're worrying and getting everybody off their knees, couples making $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year with 2 kids are still struggling, man. It's hard. It's really hard. Hillary gets this, man. That's where she's been fighting her whole life for families. You know, as I said, from card check to making sure, by the way, everybody says Supreme Court, and I think we talk about the Supreme Court, and we're only talking about issues that relate to choice and the rest. Guess what happened? There's a case in the Supreme Court only because it's a 4-4 tie, it didn't happen, to take away the right to collectively bargain. Right. You hear me now? I mean, did you ever think we'd get to the point where we had a court where with one more vote change, your right to collective bargaining is fundamentally changed? Look, her dad was born in my hometown of Scranton. Her grandfather worked at Scranton Lace, and that was hard work, man. Work in a loom. It's essentially a central loom. You know, it was like, this is a guy who busted his rear end. Sent her father to college. Her dad started a small business after college in Chicago, gave a better life. But Hillary understands these struggles. She understands that middle class is not a number. It's about being able to send your kid to a park, know they're going to come home safe. It's about being able to send your kid to a high school that if they do well, they can get to college if they want to. It's about if they want to go to college, you can figure out a way to how to get them there. It's about being able to own your home, not rent your home. Maybe most importantly, it's about being able to take one of your geriatric parents after one dies, and you'll be able to have money and hope your kids never have to take care of you. That's middle class. She understands that this is what these guys don't get. And I'm going to stop, but this is what these guys don't get. You look at, and I mean this sincerely now. You look at these beautiful, handsome young kids, and you see all the talent there. And so we say, well, if a parent can't figure out how to get them to college, it's a loss for the kids. It is. But you know what's even more profound that they don't get? It's the most devastating thing that can happen to a parent. What's the one thing that is the most devastating for a parent? To look at their kid who's in trouble or in need or has an opportunity. No, there's not a damn thing you can do to help them. I can remember, like Tim and a lot of you, I was a pretty good athlete in high school and college. I remember after my senior year, my senior prom, having a dad in the automobile business was great. He didn't own it, but he managed a dealership. It means I always got a new car for the prom. And I remember driving my 51 candy apple red Plymouth convertible with towels for seat covers after a baseball game from a little Claymont, Delaware, a little steel town I went to school in, down to Newark, Delaware, where the university is, where he managed a dealership. And I had a routine. I'd pull my car into one spot. I'd run in. I still had my spikes. I had my spikes off because I couldn't drive with my spikes on, but I had my uniform on. I ran into the showroom, and I saw Mary, the woman who ran the show for him. And I said, Mary, where's Dad? She said, oh, honey, he's out there in the lane going into the repair shop. I walked out. My dad was a real gentleman. My dad was extremely well-dressed. He was a gentleman. And my dad was pacing back and forth. And he looked up and said, oh, Joey. And he looked at me and said, I'm so sorry. And I thought, God almighty, this is before cell phones. This is a true story. My word is abiding. I thought we had maybe something happened to my mother or my brother or my sister. And he said, Joey, I went to the bank today. The guy the bank that financed the loans for this dealership. I went to see Charlie Delcher and Joey. They won't lend me the money to send you to college, honey. I'm so ashamed. I'm so ashamed. First thing I did when I got to the United States Senate was increase college loan access to 20. No, really. I'm going to end here. That's the deal, folks. That's who we are. This is about more. It's about more than just whether a kid gets an education. It's about more than whether you can afford to bring mom home. It's about more. It's about who we are as a people. It's about the stuff we're made of. It's about our values. And for all the criticism of Hillary, she gets it in her gut. She gets it. And folks, that's what made us the most unique country in the world. That sense. That sense. It's more than just about that one person, and it's all about that one person. I'm not even going to take your time because you've been standing too long, but I tell you what, I just got back. I'm supposedly an expert on foreign policies. You're reading the national press, right? No. Where I come from, an expert's anyone from out of town with a briefcase. I don't have a briefcase in me. But you know what I just had to do? I had to change my schedule to get in the plane to fly to Latvia, Estonia, and Lithuania. And you know why? To meet with the presidents. I met at a conference with their presidents. To reassure them that Donald Trump didn't represent America. Because you know what Donald Trump said? Donald Trump said he's not sure he'd honor our NATO commitment. No. To protect them if Russia invaded them. They're scared to death, with good reason, that Russia will cross the border and annex them like they did Crimea. And what's Donald Trump say? These are members of NATO. He said, we're going to check whether they paid all their dues. He is causing, for the first time, with Bush or Clinton or Obama, for the first time he's causing nations to actually wonder whether or not we'll keep our word. The idea that I ever thought in my career I'd get in a plane to make basically an emergency flight to hold the hands of 3 presidents from Estonia, Latvia, and Lithuania and say, no, 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 no. He doesn't represent Republicans or Democrats on this. Don't worry. This is a guy who admires Putin. This is a guy who doesn't know that Russian troops have already come across the border and annexed Crimea. This is a guy who guarantees that Putin is not going to invade a country he's already invaded, I guess because his campaign manager was getting paid millions of dollars by the dictator who ran the place beforehand. No, this is really, I mean, I don't believe the guy's a bad guy. I just think he is thoroughly, totally, completely uninformed. He has no idea what the hell he's talking about. And guess what? That's okay sometimes. That's okay sometimes. But I got a military aide with me carrying a briefcase. No, I mean it sincerely. That briefcase has the nuclear codes in it. God forbid if something happened to the president and a decision had to be made, I open it up and the nuclear codes are there. Just imagine giving this guy access. No, 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 I really mean it. Imagine giving this guy access to the nuclear codes. A guy who says how he'd consider using nuclear weapons. A guy who talks about how maybe other countries should become nuclear. I mean, my God. It's one thing not to know what the hell card check is. And I'm sure he has no idea what it is. It's another thing to wonder whether or not this guy thinks that. When asked by Stephanopoulos on his show, would you be prepared to make a deal with Putin about him having, I'm paraphrasing, part of Ukraine? Well, yeah, I'd consider that. Oh, good. Good, good, good. Maybe the Ribbentrop Pact between the Germans and Stalin could be reinstated here. You know what I mean? We can let us divide up. Guys, this is Trump world, the Trump world. I guess here's my point. The Trump world is already making us less safe. My son, Bo, who was a wonderful guy, and he volunteered as a prosecutor to go to in the middle of a war in Kosovo to help them set up their criminal justice system as a civilian. Then he spent a year in Iraq as a major in the United States Army, came back highly decorated with 3 decorations, including the Bronze Star. Now, let me tell you what's going on in Iraq right now. The Shia and the Quds Force and a guy named Soleimani in Tehran are trying to influence what happens in Iraq. And there's actually urban legend going on in Iraq saying that the United States supports ISIS. When he stands up there and says irresponsibly that everybody here knows is ridiculous, that Barack Obama invented ISIS, you know what happened the next day? The guy who runs Hezbollah, a terrorist organization, put out on all their networks that the nominee of one of the 2 largest parties in America, who may very well be president soon, has admitted that we started ISIS and that he has proof of this. You know what that means? We're trying now to make sure that these, what they call the Shia PMF, do not attack American forces or the American embassy in Iraq. If people believe we are supporting ISIS, what do you think happens to our kids in these countries? The man is totally irresponsible. But folks, I could have just said, my name's Joe Biden, I'm for Hillary Clinton, and Ted Strickland, and Donald Trump's dangerous, and it probably would have sufficed. Thank you very, very, very much.